Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I run through the current version of my Sunday sermon. If you have any feedback, good, bad, right, or wrong, leave it in the comments, and it might help me preach a better sermon on Sunday. Christianity and the problem of evil. Christianity asserts that this world we inhabit was created by an all-good, all-knowing, all-powerful agent. There is evil and suffering in the world that seems avoidable and purposeless to us. We easily imagine ourselves as all-powerful, and we think that we could improve upon the ratio of fullness in the world to the problem, to the issues, the amount of suffering that we find present. Now, this move to deconstruction, which has become a fancy word for sort of abandoning the church or never taking it up in your youth, sort of goes like this in some cases. I'm skeptical because of this problem of evil that any such agent exists. So I will no longer publicly participate in the propagation of the engagement with such an agent, real or imaginary, nor support those who do. If in moments of weakness or despair I privately relapse into hoping for such an agent, I'll keep it to myself and attempt to rationalize it away as some sort of vestigial infantile wish. Thank you, Dr. Freud. I will explore other stories that seem to offer betterment, both individual and communal. Both individual and communal/global for issues present to myself and to those around me, especially through politics. Religions all over the world have worked on the great puzzle. Most world religions and philosophies have, in one way or another, wrestled with the gap between fullness and suffering, and offer strategies for pursuing some form of fullness and some form of escape from suffering. Many offer some practical strategy for betterment. Now, the Old Testament, as Christians call the first big part of their Bible, is about the agony of Israel. Israel is embraced, or at least believed to be, embraced by this all-powerful, all-good, all-knowing agent, and they are God's chosen people. But they seem to have been chosen to suffer. For a brief time, they had their day in the sun under David and Solomon. They were a small empire who could coerce and control their neighbors, but they have maintained over even other empires who swamped them, the Greeks, the Romans, the Babylonians. They have controlled their identity through time. We don't run around finding temples to Marduk or Caesar Augustus or anything of the sort. Throughout history, however, they have been hounded, hunted, hated, and always the subject of persecution, and much more recently in the 20th century, a massive attempt at genocide. In the second week of Advent, we looked at the book of Malachi, where the people now, as the second temple is constructed, are waiting for the promised fulfillment, the fullness, the betterment that the prophets had talked about. And they said, God should show up and he should be called to account. He hasn't kept up his end of the covenant. And God says, well, do you really want to do some covenant assessment right now? The Lord that you seek will suddenly come to his temple. Some of us can hear the words of Handel's Messiah just ringing. The messenger of the covenant whom you delight. You might not delight in what he has to say about your performance. In the third week of Advent, last week, we looked at John the Baptist. The axe is laid at the root of the tree. Produce fruit in keeping with repentance. Straighten up your life because God is coming. And when he comes for an evaluation and inspection, you'd better not be found wanting, because he'll gather up the wheat and store it in the barn, but the chaff and those that don't make the cut will be thrown into the fire. The agent will come and he may cut you off. And we say, hey, wait a minute. I was looking for a God, sort of like a superhero, to validate me, to justify me, to rescue me, and to bring about a future good that meets my expectations of what the good really is. Now, here's the problem with Israel's God. I'm not sure I like a God who's got so much power. I'm not sure I like an agent who is going to do things that I disagree with. Surely I could navigate history towards good using suffering as a compass for betterment better than what I've seen happen in this world, in my estimations. How does that work in your other relationships? Are they ready to give you all the power of the universe? Or do they not trust you quite so much? Now, here are some cherished ideas that might meet our fancy that maybe we can all agree on. Nature has bestowed on every man an equal right to the enjoyment of all goods. Nature has imposed on every man the obligation of labor. No one without crime can abstain from work. Well, we all should work, but we all should benefit from it. In a free society, they should be neither rich nor poor. The rich who will not part with their superfluity, their excess, in favor of the indigents are the enemies of the people. The purpose of the revolution is to destroy inequity and to establish the common happiness. Some of you may listen to this and think, oh, this sounds very good. Others of you might listen to this and say, this sounds like communism. Are you getting this from the Russians? Not the Russians of today, for sure. The revolution is not an end for the rich to absorb all goods of every kind and are in exclusive domination, while the poor labor as actual slaves and are nothing in the eyes of the state. This is the analysis of the doctrine of Babeuf from the French Revolution. You might have noticed some subtle transpositions. Nature has replaced God as the arena of our actions, and the state has replaced God as the agent of fullness. Have you ever looked at the words of the French national anthem? Arise, children of the fatherland, the day of glory has arrived. Against us, tyrants, bloody standard is raised. Against us, tyrants' bloody standard is raised. Do you hear in the countryside the roar of those ferocious soldiers? They're coming right into your arms to cut the throats of your sons and your women. To arms, citizen, to arms! Form the battalions, march, march! Let an impure blood water our furrows. Our fields will grow fertile with the blood of our enemies. It's the French national anthem. It's quite a rousing song. You can find it on YouTube. Now, for a lot of deconstructed, that doesn't sound like what they're looking for. Part of it, yeah, justice for the poor, people not taking advantage of other people, but are we going to get that way through violence? Joseph Stalin famously said, you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Here in this cartoon that I clipped from Tom Holland's feed. Well, if we can't all agree, we'll resort to violence. George Orwell, of course, quipped back at Joseph Stalin, show me the omelet. We're afraid and skeptical of a personal God, partly because we're afraid and skeptical of each other. Nearly ubiquitous is the running away from the idea that some conscious, willful agent is aware and responsible for the good and the evil of what comes to pass. This luxury seems to be afforded by a context of affluence and material security, says Miroslav Volf, who saw the deconstruction of the former communist Yugoslavia develop into the bitter war in the Balkans. Israel's agony afforded no such distance. Hear you people, all of you. Listen, earth, and all who live in it, that the sovereign Lord may bear witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. Look, the Lord is coming from his dwelling place. He comes down and treads on the heights of the earth. The mountains melt beneath him, and the valleys split apart, like wax before the fire, like water rushing down a slope. All this is because of Jacob's transgression, because of the sins of the people of Israel. What is Jacob's transgression? Is it not Samaria? That was the capital of the northern kingdom. What is Judah's high place? Is it not Jerusalem? He called the temple in Jerusalem a high place, a word that was used for the pagan altars dotting the tops of the mountains. Therefore I will make Samaria a heap of rubble, a place for planting vineyards. I will pour her stones into the valley and lay bare her foundations. All her idols will be broken to pieces. All her temple gifts will be burned with fire. I will destroy all her images. Since she gathered her gifts from the wages of prostitutes, as wages of prostitutes, they will again be used. What does he mean? The armies coming through will reap the harvest of her wealth. And how do soldiers spend their money? Is God just fire and demand? Because of this, I will weep and wail. He will bring judgment, but not happily. I will go about barefoot and naked. I will howl like a jackal and mourn like an owl. For Samaria's plague is incurable, and it has spread to Judah. It has reached to the very gate of my people, even to Jerusalem itself. God plays a complex role in this drama. He is the bringer of justice, but he also laments that justice is required. Chapter 5. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor bears a son, and the rest of the brothers return to join the Israelites. He will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they will live securely, for then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth. These were these kinds of prophecies that the people listening to Malachi were uncertain about. It's been decades since Micah spoke, and we haven't seen it yet. It was 500 years between Malachi and John the Baptist. 2,000 years between Jesus and us. Is he coming? When? Deliverance, like judgment in the day of the Lord, fractals down to us. When we say we are saved, sometimes it's tiny things. Sometimes it's existential things. It goes up and down in terms of scale. Before that definitive day, we see tearing downs and raising ups. They're not always to our liking. Mary, to whom the angel visited, sings a song very different from the French Revolution. My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. Is this revolution she's talking about? He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors. Mary is too often confused with Lady Liberty, who here holds the French flag. Notice she's got something else in her other arm. For Mary, the God of Israel is the arena, not nature. And for Mary, the God of Israel is the one who raises up and tears down. Not just states. God can use states to do it, but it is God who raises up and tears down. Mary has no gun in her hand when she sings her song. Mary's song, if you might have noticed, is in the past, which is strange because in the narrative chronology of the story, she hasn't even given birth. But yet she's singing as if her salvation is completed, that already with the promise of the angel, her soul can rest. Now, she will have her ups and downs. She will have pain to suffer down the road, but it is all seen through this light, that the coming of the Son, the coming of Jesus, sets into motion the final judgment and glorification. The hope of fullness is on its way. She speaks as if it has all happened, even though the baby is still in her. She acts in faith that this deliverance will come into actuality in her life and eventually the world. Which song will you sing?